Good morning, Paul. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of March. Here's the heads up brief for today. For the Southeast Asia production, we covered 15 issues. North Asia, we covered 5, and for the Australasian Pacific Islands, we covered 4. In South Asia, we covered 17 issues, plus the major issues in the Europe, Middle East, Africa regions.
Thank you. Go ahead. Your audio is pretty choppy and echoey, but go ahead.
Right. Paul, in Thailand, the Election Commission has announced that the Thai general elections will be held on the 14th of May.
Okay, thank you.
In Indonesia, labor unions protested in Makassar yesterday, and they've threatened major strikes if the government does not revoke the government regulation on job creation that it passed in the House of Representatives yesterday.
That's interesting, but I just don't think there's will to get these strikes off the ground and get the momentum needed. So I'm not expecting great unrest, though we're looking at it very carefully. Just looking back to Thailand, this election's going to be extremely interesting to watch how Prayut manages the new parties, whether there's any skullduggery to remove emerging leaders and parties, and who and how a coalition is formed, and whether the military takes the opportunity to withdraw peacefully and with grace, or whether they don't feel yet that the potential new government has learnt the lessons from the past, whereby they were rorting the government coffers and stealing state assets. So it is a fascinating balance at the moment, and it's one of the first times I'm not suffering from analyst fatigue of Thailand for the last 20 years. It will be fascinating. Back to you.
Great. Paul, also in Indonesia, President Jokowi has been on a visit to Papua. He said that the detained New Zealand pilot's safety was a top priority. It's been over a month and a half since he was detained in the Indo-Pacific.
Yeah, his safety is a priority for all public relations purposes, but upfront security, the ability to wipe out a bunch of masked militant madmen has been beyond, by far, the largest military force in Southeast Asia, and one of the largest, ignoring India and China, one of the largest in Asia Pacific, which is just absurd that they can't secure that environment. It's because various security forces and politicians have other agendas that aren't synergistic with securing the province. It's more about securing personal wealth. Okay, chopping past that, back to you.
Right. Well, in Myanmar, the National Unity Government has sent a letter to the Thai state-owned oil and gas exploration company to suspend payments to the military-controlled Myanmar oil and gas enterprise. The National Unity Government is also demanding information on what PTT-EP has paid in revenues to the military since the takeover last year in 2021. It's also warned that it will put the matter up for arbitration in Singapore if PTT-EP does not cooperate within 30 days.
Okay, look, we wrote a report specifically on this. I'd like so you and Rugger to go back and just analyse the indicators. I think I missed an indicator there that the arbitration, bringing it to arbitration in Singapore is a useful point in time, though it's not an indicator itself that it'll affect the security paradigm for companies operating in Myanmar. However, this is a serious thing. I've seen that we've heralded appropriate warnings to aforementioned companies. So thanks for showing initiative to do that. But we do just need to brush off that report in light of the NUG being so clear and outspoken. Now, remembering the NUG itself struggles with levels of competency and unity. The People's Defence Forces that are active against the coup government are sadly quite disorganised, but of course they are destructive and committing great, not only unrest, but explosions, attacks, murders, killings. So we really need to update that report, not necessarily to circulate, but just for our own internal purposes and just look at the scenarios we've outlined and the relevant indicators. Okay,
Great, we'll do more.
thank you.
In South Asia, Paul, in Bangladesh, 10 police officers and 15 other people were injured in Dhaka division. This is after violence broke out over local election results. We can expect to see this increase in the run up to the January 2024 elections.
Okay, thank you.
In India, the National Investigation Agency will join the manhunt for a Sikh separatist who has been on the run since the 18th of March. The law and order situation in Punjab has calmed down, but mobile internet services are still suspended in some places.
Okay, thank you.
In France, anger over the pension reform law continues. Protests have continued for the 6th day yesterday at an ExxonMobil oil depot. Clashes broke out between striking workers and security forces. The government is trying to force workers back to work. Unions have also said that they'll cut power to the offices of politicians and their residencies, and they'll try to block access to power plants.
Okay, that's a classic piece of France has been like this for the time memorial, where they entitled people in Paris making decisions for the best of what helps them appear to be managing a country extremely well. Unrest breaks out, never the two shall meet, and everyone loves to point at new migrants, but very few of them are involved in this unrest, and they're often a very convenient scapegoat. But the reality is the us and thems, the haves and have-nots, is no wider in anywhere else than it is in France, within Europe. Thank you.
Regarding Ukraine, there's a couple of developments, Paul. So the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida met Ukrainian President Zelensky yesterday in a surprise visit to Ukraine. After this happened, 2 Russian strategic bombers flew over the Sea of Japan.
Look, this is really interesting. I mean, Germany and Japan sending tanks and playing a major part and getting involved in Japanese build-ups, and Japan involved in exercises in the Pacific. Ironically, all the UN mandates preventing these are all gone out the back door when it suits Uncle Sam. Thank you.
Right. Also, the International Monetary Fund has reached a stop-level agreement to give Ukraine over $15 billion over a period of 4 years. And the agreement apparently takes into consideration Ukraine's path to joining the European Union.
Okay, that's very interesting. I mean, it would have been lovely for them to just, if they were going to say, we're going to bring you into NATO, it would have been a whole lot better before saying they're going to join EU and join NATO, that all these things were done up front with courtesies to the Ukraine, so that the country isn't, 1/3 destroyed and going to be reeling for decades. And it could have avoided massive costs if the protocols and the processes to join EU and NATO were done with a little bit more thought and a little bit more wisdom up front. Unfortunately, thought and wisdom are something that is severely lacking in NATO, in Europe, and sad to say, in most of the Western world. And when we look at monitoring what's coming out of the West and what's coming out of Russia and China, and this is not condoning China or Russia's political systems or their behaviours, but their messages are clear. They're not masked. Russia was very clear, we're going to draw a line in the sand if this continues. America made them back off about German and French warnings that it would lead to an invasion of Ukraine going back to 2014. And now we're in a state where Zelensky is going to take power on the mandate of finding a solution with Russia, gets diverted after he's elected, flies to DC, comes back, and a massive war starts. The common thread is Iraq, weapons of mass destruction, same guys behind that. Okay, thank you.
Well, that's a brief for today. Anything else from you?
No, love another chat, maybe about 1:10 if we could, okay?
Sure.
Thanks, cheers.